Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This 6-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, what an unbelievable treat. Now, you know I get excited when we talk to a fellow Sixer, but this is someone who's been in my corner, man, going on 7+ years. Just an absolute incredible human, lives exactly what he talks about day in and day out, and has been able to go back home and now works for the hometown team, which is just one of those full circle things that's just absolutely so cool. We're going to get into it. Alain Monroy, welcome to the Got Your Six podcast.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be here. It's a pleasure to see you. You're doing amazing stuff, brother.
Thank you, my man. It's not every day I get to talk to the director of global partnerships for the Vegas Golden Knights, which for some people who don't know, Bill Foley, who owns the Golden Knights, is an actual Army veteran himself.
So yeah, he's actually a West Point graduate, I believe, class of '67.
Okay.
But he actually joined the Air Force. He did cross commissioning into the Air Force, is my understanding.
Yeah. So when we talk about partnerships, right, it's one of those things that, when you're deployed, you're always working with a host nation. But one of those things that you've talked about, I remember, is when you're dealing with partnerships, a lot of what you're doing on your side is listening. How do you implement what you took from the military to now being in the business world, especially in the sports world, where it can be very cutthroat, from my understanding? How do you work these global partnerships so it's not these transactional deals of like, hey, we just need some money, we'll put your logo somewhere? How do you do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So over the last few years, the sports marketing or specifically partnerships and sponsorships has transitioned tremendously. Back in the day, and I'm new to the industry, so I did a lot of my research, was very transactional, very much about brand awareness and direct sponsorships. And now it's transitioned into this global partnership space where it's more about building relationships, customizing everything that we do to the partners that we work with. We're value creators, right? So finding unique and innovative ways to add value to these brands that are already being successful, right? A lot of them don't always feel the need to get into the sports marketing world, for those that aren't already. So it's our job to provide that value, and not to convince anyone or pitch them or try to force them to come into sports marketing, because it's not for everyone, but really to build those relationships and listen, like you said, and understand those pain points of what's not working for you. What could you be doing better? Because every CEO, CFO, CMO out there is losing sleep over something, right? They're trying to accomplish something in their organization. So if we can be helpful in any way and bring it into an industry that everyone loves, right? Who doesn't love the sports industry? Who doesn't get emotionally connected to their team or their town? So that's what's the most exciting part of this job, is just being able to work with all types of people, all types of organizations, and to just create value for those organizations and to truly help them.
And as you talk about creating value, right, let's look at it a little bit, come back a little bit, is from a team standpoint, right? You came in, in college, you were playing baseball, looking to go into the MLB, went the route slightly different, right? You had a uniform on, which was halfway there, fellow Red Leg Ranger School, deployments. We connected in Hawaii. And then you come out on the other side, right, back home, like I said, with the Vegas Golden Knights. That transition between the tribes, essentially, as you create value, how do you continue, especially a veteran going into this very competitive sports world? How did you find, or what was the question that you had to ask yourself? Hey, this is the value I bring to the table. This is what I'm going to show.
Yeah, I mean this is a tough industry to break into. It's a tough industry to be in. It's not all fun and games. Literally, it's not all fun and games, right? It's not just going to games and hanging out with the players. In fact, very separate from the business and the operations side, whether it be hockey operations or business operations side. Very two different sides. A lot of that is, like you said, is you're wearing different jerseys throughout. Like I grew up playing baseball, never really thought about hockey growing up here in Vegas. We didn't even have teams here in Vegas, right? There was a lot of that identity issue where you were cheering for teams all across the country because we didn't have any local teams, right? UNLV, my undergraduate university, was really the only
Running
team
Rebels.
to root for. Exactly. Back in the 90s, they were tremendous in basketball. So a lot of that, like you said, came full circle. Now coming back, we have several teams, but here we really are the Vegas-born team. But aside from that, the sports industry, it's not like other industries where you have a year, 2 years to ramp up, right? I think what's great where veterans come into the space is that we're used to jumping in, sometimes literally jumping in or air assaulting in, and you have to learn on the
I'm catching
fly.
all these. Don't think
Yeah,
they're going
yeah,
unnoticed. You're just
yeah.
dropping
No, no,
nuggets,
no,
so I don't want to
no, no,
interrupt.
no. I appreciate it. Sometimes you have to jump in literally and learn quickly on the fly. Our seasons are 6 to 8 months long. If we're lucky, we're going into the playoffs and going into the finals. For the most part, you don't have 6 years, or excuse me, you don't have 6 months or a year to ramp up, right? You have to come in quickly and perform. And that's why it's tough to hire into the sports industry. But I think veterans coming in, we're used to doing that. I mean, as officers, you're not in a job for more than a year, maybe two, right? So you're constantly growing, constantly learning, constantly evaluating what the opportunities are and how to provide that value and how to create solutions for those problems, right? So I think it just makes common sense for me and for other veterans that are transitioning out that are trying to find their way into an industry that they're going to be passionate about, an industry that they can perform in. And it helps them with that identity crisis that you have when you leave the Army or whatever service you were in. So I think that's where the connection is. But we're used to creating value quickly. We're used to finding solutions for problems quickly and effectively, right? Not rushing to failure. So a lot of those things just transfer to the sports industry.
As you try to find your identity in the sports world, what was one thing, as you kind of look at in retrospect, that you spent a lot of time on that you would recommend completely skipping as a veteran or someone, a service member breaking into the sports industry?
Yeah, I think I get a lot of questions of, were you a big hockey fan growing up? Are you really into hockey? Do you know a lot about hockey? And believe it or not, I mean, I am a fan, obviously, because we have the Vegas Golden Knights since 2017, and I became a fan because it was our first professional team. But you don't need to be an expert in the sport that you're working in. It's more than just being passionate about baseball or football or hockey to work in sports. In fact, sometimes disconnecting from that emotional connection to the team and just seeing it as a business can be an attribute to being successful in the sports industry, because you don't want to just rely on being passionate about the sport or knowing what all the players are doing and almost being just like a fanboy or fangirl, right? You really want to be a professional and match up your qualifications with your passion for the industry in order to have your skills and attributes line up to come in and create value right off the bat, right? So that's where I think that misconception is. I was asked, and I like to say this, I was asked zero questions about hockey during the interview process. No one cares about how much hockey you know. Now, of course, when you're with the clients and the partners and amongst the team, you like to talk about what's going on. You want to be up to speed, and you will learn it because you're in it. But you do not have to be an expert in the sport that you're working in to be successful in the sports industry.
Now, that's a phenomenal point, right? It's just like there's a lot of on the job training, but you look at those like soft skills that people talked about, like we've already talked about, listening more than you talk. Where do you think, as you kind of like look back, is like what is a core skill you have now that you kind of wish you would have developed a little bit earlier on?
I would say self-awareness. I think self-awareness is a continuous battle for all of us, but for me specifically, I have so much more self-awareness now as a man, as a professional, as a, you know, as a son, as a friend, as a partner, all these types of things that I didn't think about coming up, right? We were so focused on the mission and we were soldiers, and it was very much about serving, right? And since I got out, now going on almost 7 years, which is crazy to even think about. That's how long ago we were in Hawaii together. But I spent a lot of time really focusing on myself, right? I'm big on manifesting. I'm big on positive affirmation and really creating your reality and creating what you want to be, right? Creating your world. David Meltzer talks about this. I actually just read his book, Connected to Goodness. I had the opportunity to meet David a few weeks back, and he comes to Vegas often, and he talks a lot about this. A lot of it comes from like being afraid and having that fear of, am I going to be able to make it in this industry? Am I going to be able to make it when I leave the military? All these what if, all these kind of negative thoughts that a lot of us just have naturally, right? So kind of reframing that and having that self-awareness to say, like, I belong here, right? I can be effective in this industry, whether it's in banking, nonprofit, whether you have a podcast, whether you're still in the military, where you're going into sports, whatever it may be. It's really being self-aware and understanding where your areas of opportunity are and where you bring value to the table, and looking inward, not outward, and not kind of blaming external factors, and really just focusing on yourself. I think that's the tremendous growth that I've seen in myself just in the last few years.
And as you look inward, what does that practice look like? Is it a deliberate one that you do every so often, or in the moment you kind of stop yourself and say a phrase or a term to kind of like realign and be like, all right, hey, like you said, I belong in this room. I have a seat at the table. What does that look like in the moment?
Yeah, so I do have a practice, and I think most of us are routine based, right? Getting up early in the morning, the taking the cold showers. Really, I spend some time with myself in the morning, manifesting, really focusing on positive affirmations on what I want to create, focusing on my goals, and everything is in the positive, not in the lack of, not in the want, but in the affirming what I want to create. And believe it or not, what you're doing when you do that is you're retraining your subconscious to believe it. And that's what it comes back to. If you don't believe it, you can't lie to yourself. You can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to your subconscious. So it's retraining, rewiring your subconscious to say, this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm accomplishing, as if it's already happening, right? Like, I am this, I am accomplishing this, I am getting to these goals, right? And living that. On top of that, you have to action it. You have to live it every day. So throughout the day, throughout the weeks, you have to stop and assess, okay, what am I doing? Am I on track? Ask for feedback. Are people noticing these things? Are they giving you feedback? Hey, are you on the right track? Are you not? But at the end, it's just coming back to yourself and believing that you're doing the right thing for what you want to create in your life.
So as you look to what you want to create in your life, is that when you're writing those down, and are you speaking those manifestations out loud? Are you writing them down? And then how do you find yourself to get back on track? Because sometimes it's, you get lost in the noise as you search for like these signals that exist out there, and we fall off the track. How do you get back on? So that's a 2-part question.
Yeah, so I speak it internally, and everyone's different, right? You could speak it out loud, you could write it down. I keep a list, and we're going in deep here. I'm giving all the nuggets here, but I write them all down, and I add to them as I go. I adjust them. I recalibrate them, like we used to do back in the day, right? Calibration exercises. Same thing, right? It's just figuring out.
Back in the day, I'm still doing that.
Well, that's right. You're still doing it. There's no back. You're in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day for me, I mean, well, now you just push a button and it does it automatically, right? With all the technology. Yeah. That's what I hear. No. But no, it's that constant shift of reassessing. So you're not in autopilot, right? You are intentionally looking at your list or your whatever you're writing down, or whether you're listening to it, you're recording your own voice and listening to it. Whatever way you do that, you don't want to get in that autopilot. You want to continuously check in with yourself and say, like, am I there? Am I really, do I really believe? Am I really accomplishing what I'm setting out to? And if not, then what do I need to change? What is this trying to teach me? Whatever's happening in my life is trying to teach me something. It's happening for me, not to me. So when it's happening for me, what is it trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? And how can I recalibrate and kind of shift to where I want to move forward to?
You touched on something there, and it was, do I believe? So then what do you know for sure?
Well, what I know for sure is that we create whatever we believe. So that's why you can't lie to yourself. So if you don't believe in yourself, no one will, right? You have to truly, and again, it's not the social media influencer external aspect of it where, oh, I believe. No. This, you truly in your core, in your subconscious have to believe that you are what you're setting out to be. You have to act as if you're already in the place you want to be in order to manifest what you want to create, right? If your subconscious senses even a little bit of doubt, even a little bit of fear, it's going to know that, oh, you don't truly believe. So that's just an opportunity for you to recalibrate and continue to get to that point where there is no doubt. And you know beyond a doubt that you believe in yourself, what you're trying to create.
And I know this is something that you've lived with for a long time, but as we've gone on in the last 7 years, right, you continue to go back to this, like, I believe in myself and I will continue to do what I set out to do. As you look at, as that has improved your life, when the fear might come or like show up, what are you saying? What are we doing? Where are you going? What does that look like?
Yeah, and it's going to happen, right? We're not robots. We're going to fail and we're going to learn from it. When it happens, you'll notice yourself growing and learning because, one, it's going to happen less and less throughout. But when it happens, it's almost like it feels as if it's atypical because you're not used to it anymore. After a while, you're going to be so used to positive affirmations and thinking positively and focusing your energy on what you want to create that when that fear kicks in, it's almost going to feel uncomfortable because it used to feel comfortable because you lived in that fear, you lived in that doubt. Now you live in a different world. So when it happens to me, I immediately know, okay, I'm off balance. I need to go back to my list. I need to sit down with myself. I need to focus. Where am I having doubt? Where am I not truly believing that I can accomplish this? And then adjust that accordingly to keep moving forward. But it's going to happen. We're not robots. We're not on autopilot here. It's very intentional.
Yeah. And as you talk about being intentional, right? When you especially forming sports partnerships, I can imagine like going back to the beginning of the conversation, you're seeking these pain points. What is the go-to question, Alan, that you say like, hey, and maybe it is as direct as, what are your pain points? Tell me where you have gaps. What is that? What is the go-to question you're saying?
Yeah, I think you develop the questions as you're researching the type of brands that you want to work with. Going back to being intentional, there isn't a formula that I personally apply to every single opportunity that I work on. I take each individual opportunity as its own little case study, and I do as much research as I can on said brand, said company, so that I understand them almost sometimes better than maybe they understand themselves. So when I show up to even that first meeting, I'm very prepared to say, this is what I've read. This is what I'm hearing in the market. I've spoken to people in your organization. This is what I'm getting from feedback. Does that align with your goals, your objectives? Are you kind of like, are you confirming to me that these are your pain points? If not, correct me. What are your objectives? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in the next couple of years? Again, but showing up with that preparation, showing up with the right questions, but also having done your homework where you can almost help them. It's kind of like a brainstorming session where you're helping them throughout that discovery call so that they already see you as a valued member of the team. And that's what we want to be. We want to be a valued member of their marketing team, basically, as a third-party sports organization that can provide them tools and techniques to reach an audience that they wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. So I think that's key, is having that preparation before you even figure out what the questions are. You have to do your research and understand what the environment is. Again, bringing it back to the military. That's exactly what we did when we were figuring things out during an operations order, right? So.
And you're seeing, yeah, you're going through the whole thing, right? From the start to finish. You understand the environment, you're working through MDMP.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing in that same preparation. And just how there's so
and
many
it works.
different
it
points.
Works, right?
Yeah,
There's a reason
absolutely.
that we do this, because it works. So,
and you still apply those lessons now, even though it's a different mission, right? Whether you're on the ice in the T-Mobile arena, or you're off in the seat, not in the C-suite, but up in the C-suite, trying to figure out, hey, how do we make sure the team's brand is aligning with other brands that only strengthen both organizations?
absolutely spot on.
So as you go through it, right, you're looking at different players in the game, and you're kind of saying, maybe at first, like, I don't know if we can do it. And then you're like, absolutely, we can do it. What, where have you just been like in the moment? Like, this is incredible. We're talking, we're doing this thing. And like, you almost have to like pinch yourself.
Yeah.
Do you have an example?
This is an exciting industry. I mean, everything that we do is, like I said, customizable. We don't really do the cookie cutter branding campaigns for all partners, right? We do everything customizable to that brand, and every brainstorming session, every opportunity is so unique that it's an experience of its own, right? So I can't talk specifics, right, with company names, but
sure.
What I'm focusing on right now is getting outside of the typical box. And what I mean by that is, what's around the corner? What are the type of partnerships in sports that aren't currently happening, right? Because anyone can reach out to the beer companies, the car companies, the watch companies, the hotels, right? And try to develop a partnership with them. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that we do that too. But what's the next wave? What are we not even thinking about in this next generation of influencers, this new economy, this new phase of innovation where no one's ever heard of this, whatever this next thing will be? That's what I want to focus on. That's what I want to find, is what's around the corner, that when I bring it to the team, they've never heard of the brand. They think the idea is crazy. And because we're Vegas, we're going to do it. And we're going to go after it. And we're going to do it at a high level, like we do everything else. So that's the exciting part, is when you find something that people are going to say, well, we've never done that before. That's exactly what we want to go after.
Looking at those very complementary untapped verticals, which, like you said, is so Vegas, right? Pulling things that it's a city in the middle of the desert that shouldn't exist, and it's absolutely thriving. I love how you embody the city as you look to make these decisions and look at different partnerships across the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, this is my home, so go ahead. It's I'm sure we'll talk about that, but yeah.
No, and that's the thing, right? Like, you're able to embody it because you lived it. You continue to live it. You're born and raised there, and you continue to give back not only to the team now that exists. There's now more teams coming in, but you're able to just be like, what does 10-year-old Alan look like as he looks up to the sports team and be like, yes, that is my team. I'm not chasing a team halfway across the state, the country, and trying to root for them. It's locally grown, and it's the only one so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They say that when you're doing that self-assessment again, right? There's only two people you should focus on making proud, and that's your 10-year-old self and your 80-year-old self, right? And if the 10-year-old self saw what I was doing right now, he would lose his mind because there was no Vegas Golden Knights, and to be working in sports, it's a true privilege. And then hopefully I'm on the right track so that my 80-year-old self is also proud of me. But that's about it. It's all about bringing it back inward. But the fact that I've been fortunate enough to kind of come full circle and be back, where I grew up, where I went to school, where I started my military career, and then now being back here in the sports industry with the true Vegas born team going into year 6, it's just phenomenal, and I'm very grateful. And I want to give back. I want to help other veterans get into the sports industry and translate those skills to make them effective in the sports industry, but to help them reach that level of identity that, again, you lose a little bit when you leave. You're lucky enough where, and I don't say lucky because it's all hard work and all the phenomenal things that you've done. You're still in it, but you're also, you got the podcast, you're doing things externally to the military as well. When I was in, I was only focused on the Army, and it wasn't until I transitioned that I saw what all was out there, all the opportunities that were out there. And now kind of coming back full circle, there's an opportunity to give back and help others kind of with that transition, because I know how tough it can be.
As you look at the transition, kind of back at it, along the way, right, to be able to go full circle, you have to go through trials and tribulations. Where have you had just a spectacular failure along the way that's ultimately led you to get to this point today?
Well, I tried to launch a business right before COVID. So that was a spectacular failure, but I learned a ton from it. I left corporate America right before the pandemic, and who knew, right? I wanted to try my hand at being an entrepreneur, and I dabbled in a couple of different businesses, and I was one of the lucky ones. I was able to kind of resurface from that and kind of sell off some assets and kind of be all right, and then have that opportunity to reassess what I wanted to do, and then ended up going into the nonprofit space, which eventually led me to sports through the partnerships industry. But I think we learn so much more from failures than we do from success, right? If it weren't for those failures, just like recycling Ranger School, I recycled Mountain Phase. So if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be. Yeah, there you go. I mean, we're mountain recycled, so that we're a different breed. But
yeah, we are a different breed,
man. Let me tell you. But if it weren't for those failures, if it weren't for those lessons learned, you wouldn't have the successes, right? And there's a lot of people that talk about this, but to truly live it and to look backwards and to almost be grateful for those failures, as opposed to being angry or resentful. I think, again, that's how I know I've grown, where I can look back and be thankful. Wow, I'm glad those things happened to me, rather than just having an easy sail through the process. So yeah,
no one ever celebrates easy, at the end of the day.
No, we don't do easy.
As we kind of wrap up, Alain, I have one final question, and it's, again, director of global partnerships with the Golden Knights. You're in the NHL. Puck just dropped recently. Like things are cruising. In all of that, with everything going on, how are you better today than yesterday?
Yeah, I ask myself that a lot. I'm only in competition with myself, right? It's tough. It's tough not to look outward and compare yourselves to others. But I try to look inward and say, okay, where have I progressed? Where have I learned? And today, I am more self-aware. I am more prepared for what's to come, because, again, I'm looking inward and I'm focusing on manifesting and positive affirmations towards my future and what I want to create, rather than forcing things. I'm also allowing things to happen. I'm allowing things to flow naturally while I'm working my butt off at the same time. I mean, that doesn't mean just kind of sit back and let things happen, but allowing instead of forcing, and then continuing to check with myself to say, okay, this is where you're at. And then also, who are you helping? How are you giving back? Where are you truly making that impact in someone else's life? So those are continuous questions that I'm asking myself as I'm going through to know that I'm on the right track.
And we're extremely grateful for you giving back to us and the Sixers out there with everything from today, right? You're sharing your tactics, your methods, your strategies, your ideas, and we're incredibly grateful. Alain, where can people go to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, and if they have any questions about, being a veteran in sports?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, you can feel free to share my LinkedIn or tag it on there, but LinkedIn's the best place to reach out. Again, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to help the next generation of veterans to join the sports industry. And thanks, Tony. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, man. And most importantly, hey, thanks for having our six. Appreciate it, brother.
All right. Appreciate you. All right. Take care, man.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.